job fair, and I'm gonna be putting in my job.
Volunteer at a homeless shelter for Thanksgiving.
And bring them some pie.
That's a thick pie.
I know.
The chicken and rice and the green beans.
That's gonna be a
The
dumb.
roast, the turkey, the cranberry sauce, the stuffing. It's all here.
Don't you mean it's all here? Don't touch the pot and burn.
There.
Hi, Sadie.
Okay, that was weird.
It's not about what we can do, it's about Jesus. And we've been, every Tuesday and Thursday nights here, we have, well, some people say Bible study, but it's really church. We don't do church like normal church, but it's always about Jesus. And it's always really engaging. But the last couple months, God's really just been hammering with me on the message of grace. And I'm going to share a little bit with you, not too long. I know everybody's hungry. But several years ago in ministry, God really challenged me with what grace was. And I'm a studier. I'm sure some of you guys in here can relate. If I ever get on the subject, I dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. And sometimes I've, even in biblical things, dug to a place that I'm like, what am I digging for? I mean, this really doesn't matter. But grace was one of those subjects. And I started researching Word, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, and all of a sudden I realized that the definition of grace that I'd been taught, even learning to preach, was not the proper definition of grace. So we're all taught that grace means unwarranted measure or unwarranted favor. That is the Old Testament Hebrew meaning. The New Testament meaning comes from the word charis, which means a divine touch on the human heart and the reflection of it in the life thereof. That's a big difference, because that's why when you see somebody and somebody goes, wow, that lady or that guy is full of grace. How do you know that? Because it flows out of it. The divine touch on the heart and it reflecting in the life thereof. If every Christian in the world lived out the grace that we claim we have, we'd have a different world. An absolutely different world. And all these things that we, you know, today, I work. I always have worked, even though I'm a preacher. I believe preachers ought to work. Got to be involved in the whole world like everybody else is. You can't say anything in a conversation in America today that you're not about to get a backlash. Don't talk about politics. I mean, you can say something negative about either side and you got to fight. Don't talk about racism. Don't talk about sexuality. You don't talk about these things, but however, if we're living grace, any topic that's out there, we're able to talk about, because Jesus can minister to anything. Okay? So, I'm going to read you a little bit out of the Gospel of John, and we're going to talk about who Jesus is and what Jesus is, and the fact that if you claim Him, He needs to reflect in your life. If you're born again, it should be obvious within 5 minutes of someone observing your life that grace is flowing from you. And you know what? I'm not preaching from a bully pulpit, because there's been many, many days in my life that didn't. And I'm going to tell you something else. I still have those days, trying to put them away. But we should live a life of grace. And no matter what we face at work, I had a guy at work last week. He said, brother, I need to talk to you about something not work related. I said, okay. He said, I'm having marital problems. I said, anybody that's married is having marital problems. And he said, I'm not kidding. I said, I'm not either. I said, but it's something that grace can work us through. I was able to minister to a minute. This guy's 70 years old, and he's the elder in his church. I was able to minister to him with a few words, and then the Holy Spirit just said, why don't you just pray? So, in the middle of a busy workplace, he's the only other believer I think that's even there. I started praying for him. The Holy Spirit started praying for him. He started crying, I started crying, another Southern started crying, but the Holy Spirit just encompassed that room. That Monday, he came in and he told me, he said, my wife and I talked, I think, for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
That's what Jesus does.
Beautiful.
But we have to live that. We can't just preach it or tell somebody to read this book, or you can't go to church enough times to get it. You have to live it. You know, I could right now go declare that I'm going to become an automobile. And I could sleep in the garage for the next 20 years and I would not be an automobile, okay? Grace is the same way. Amen. Let's read this. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and all things were created through him. And apart from him, not one thing was created that had been created. Listen to this verse. Life was in him, and that life was the light of men. That light shines in the darkness, yet the darkness did not overcome it. Jesus is grace. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul makes a comment. He's about to teach grace. He said, I'm coming here to teach you guys the testimony of God. Powerful statement. What's the testimony of God? Jesus. It's grace. The divine touch on the heart and able to flow through your life. Paul said, I didn't come with excellence of speech, persuasive words, or brilliance. He said, I don't even care to know anything among you except one thing, Christ crucified, grace. Jesus is the life of men. The most important thing we can understand as a person, first of all, am I really born again? If you are, I guarantee you at some point you've had some doubts about your salvation. That's natural, okay? Usually it's when we're behaving bad or when we can't work things out. But I find many times, it happens here all the time in Bible study, somebody will go, you know what, man? I don't think I'm really born again. I had an emotional response. I said a prayer after somebody. I was at a jacked up revival meeting and the guy said, if you want to get saved, just slip your hand in the air. And I did it and I thought I was saved. What's more tragic than living a life claiming you're a Christian and doing all the things, speaking Christianese, man, walk like one, talk like one, act like one, and then get to the end of the day when you stand before Jesus and you go, Lord, didn't I prophesy in your name? Didn't I do this in your name, do this in your name? And he goes, depart from me, I never knew you. That's the most tragic thing there could be. A lot of people are living right there. I've lived there. We need to understand the full purpose for anything and everything we do is Jesus. It's teaching men the law of liberty of Jesus. Being able to truly be born again, have a relationship with the Father, and that flow off of you to a point that somebody goes, man, whatever they got, I need some of that. I deal with a lot of people. I was telling brother a story. I have a dear friend that helps with this mission. One of the most charitable guys you'll ever meet. He's an atheist. Wow. And we're friends. And over the last few years, I always work on him. Don't tell him he's going to hell because he's an atheist. I mean, if you don't have to tell people they're going to hell. They know it if they're not living right. Something in their spirit tells them that. But through a working relationship, last year, if you hadn't seen our raised beds in the back, we'll show them to you. We put raised beds here. This guy sponsored the raised beds, and that's what he does. We planted broccoli, he planted broccoli. He comes by the mission, he's like, hey preacher, how's your broccoli? I said, man, come look at this broccoli. We get back there, our broccoli crowns were that big around.
Wow, that's cool.
He looked at him. He said, man, how come at Seed Galveston, my broccoli's this big around, and yours is this big around? I said, hey bro, we pray over ours.
That's right.
And then I said, you want me to come pray over yours? He goes, yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
Good.
Slowly but surely, grace and acceptance of him. I love everything he's given me. You know what, guys? God's delivered me through so many prejudices. I used to, you could say the word Muslim and I'd broke it. I've developed a real deep friendship with a Muslim guy that I'm sharing Jesus with. The imam from this Muslim big mosque here sent us enough food to feed